New numbers from the WASDE report, and yet we are going to discuss the tariffs applied on Brazil that would come on August 1st. Right here on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. So, Jerry, everybody's eager to hear you about the WASDE numbers, where we got some ending stocks for corn that are lower, which is might be good for the markets. But first, we cannot skip the news of this week about Brazil. The tariffs that are imposed in Brazil by the United States are now 50% on the top of specific tariffs, and that will affect some manufacturing, just like steel and aluminum, that will be, of course, crushed out of the market. But mostly this affects the commodity markets, such as the agricultural products, excuse me, just like the orange juice and many other products that Brazil export to the United States, such as coffee. So these will be very market impacting.
Oh, definitely. U.S. and Brazil both enjoy our cup of coffee, and there's been a long time connection there because of the expanded and connection there in the coffee production in Brazil. From there, and also, like you mentioned, we got orange juice. We also have some inexpensive beef that's been very strong sales in the U.S. So all three of those things are going to end up impacting the U.S. Cost structure on things going forward. Uh, Not sure exactly uh, how we got here. There really hasn't been a lot of connection, in total. Like car sales or things like that that's irritated the U.S. imports or irritated, yeah, imports from Asia and Europe and places like that. Uh, President Trump sometimes wakes up and thinks he needs to make some kind of comments about everything, and now we've got ourselves in kind of a conflict going on when I don't think there really was anything going on from there. Particularly his connection to Bolsonaros and the previous administrations and all this type of thing. I'm not sure he understands what goes on in Brazil, but he seems to be supporting his old friend from there. To some extent, that's really along with the weather situations with rain across the Midwest, along with the uh, commentaries out of Washington with increasing numbers here. The one thing that did occur was the extension out to August 1st on these particular letters he sent out to various places. But I don't know. We need to get something moving along and get something settled. Unfortunately, it's very complicated when you get manufacturing and agricultural. I think the agricultural things could get straightened out quicker, but unfortunately, the manufacturing side of things, when you're talking about historical relationships and things out over the years, it's you just don't turn those around over 6 months or a year period of time. And so, hopefully, some cooler heads will prevail here, and we'll get some things worked out along the way. At this point, though, it's definitely been a complicated situation that has extended a lot further than his August, or excuse me, his April announcements about how things are going to work out so quickly with his expanded export tariffs.
One key feature would be how much the Brazilian real can depreciate. It didn't happen so much right after the announcement.
Yeah, there was maybe a quick 2 or 3%, but it hasn't really expanded out to compensate, like you say, for the 50% tariff scenarios along the way. So that is a interesting scenario, both U.S. and internationally here as to how things like this are going to get totally worked out. But right now, at least, there's lots more confusion in the market than was here just a few days ago.
Yes, and on Friday we have had this update by the USDA with their WASDE report, and you have had your own estimates on the week prior, and it seems that the USDA has put some lower end in stocks likewise, and I think that is at least this will be at least short-term good news in the markets.
Oh, I agree that the interesting twist on it is that even with these numbers, an old and new crop, there was uh, even the average estimates didn't have a lot of adjustments anticipated here. The one thing that definitely is boiling hard in the U.S. is the fact that we've had modest heat so far, and uh, a lot of rain has occurred in the Western Corn Belt here over the last 5 or 6 weeks since June has begun. And that really is a positive thing about potential yields. The biggest problem on this thing is we were in a similar situation a year ago where optimism was very high. And then I don't think we had as much rain last year as we have this year, but at the same time, uh, we got way out over our expectations here during August and September, and unfortunately, it took us all the way until January before we got our actual yields down to where they really were at versus what the optimism is at this point. I don't know if that's going to make a difference with the USDA or not, but they didn't make the adjustments in their yield to 181 and 52.5, and that the interesting twist on it is in the corn particularly, we uh, had a small carryover stock reduction here by 25 million, but they had some big adjustments in old crop. We really have been very strong in exports in that, and it looks like that the world is looking at these current prices near loan or a little bit below or thereabouts, and that, and they're looking to take advantage of that and stockpile things at this point. And so the USDA actually increased their exports by 100 million this month, but they also slipped back feed demand by about 75. So the adjustment was only 25 million in carryover stock. The reduction in feed demand is really looking at a pretty dramatic change in the cattle feed numbers, excuse me, cattle on feed numbers that were out here earlier this in late June, and that about the size of the crop or size of the number of animals in the feed yards. Cattle are the biggest consumer of corn, as we all know. But I think longer term here on the new crop side, they did even take a little some money, some 50 million out of new crop demand too. But I think that because of the need for total meat and that, I think we will see some expanded hog numbers. They are really up against 100%. I think the chickens will expand too. So corn demand is going to be good. It's going to be interesting as to how much protein demand we switched. Cattle don't use a lot of soybean demand, meal demand, while both swine and chickens do. So we could definitely use that because they did adjust their soybean crush for the numbers pretty aggressively here because of the recent passage of the bills there about expanded soybean oil in the in the biodiesel or renewable diesel world, and that's going to create a lot of meals. So we're going to have to find places for that to be sold. So hopefully we can get some more chickens and swine out there to eat that meal.
Yes, and what did you see on the soybean side?
Well, on the soybean side, the numbers on old crop uh, didn't have a lot of adjustments. We did end up having have recently seen some more export sales go off the books. They did increase the old crop demand here about 15 million on soybeans on the export side. The real twist of it is that sometimes this is kind of unusual that the USDA this time decided to reduced their residual from 42 million down to 27. So there's the 15 million. So all of a sudden we're unchanged on our soybean carryover stock. I'm not, it's interesting because I think it has come back to the fact that the stocks number was a little higher than anticipated. So people were thinking maybe that crop size from last year might be a little overestimated, things of that nature. And also the fact that the 42 million number that the USDA has been carrying here for 4 or 5 months is a pretty hefty residual number. So taking it down to 27 is, I think, a little too far, but it's a number that can be possible here when we finally get to the September 1st here, which is surprisingly only 2 months away now, since or two less than 2 months away at this point in the soybeans. Now the switch over to new crop, interestingly enough, both corn and soybeans had about 115, 120 million reduced plantings back here on uh, the July 30th numbers and that. But in both cases here, we've had expanded, or I should say, reduced harvest numbers. And beans, we had another number here of about 50 million in harvested. That's really coming back to some of the weather conditions, things like that. And also, I think there has actually, with this heavy rains over the last 2 or 3 weeks, in some places of the country, we've started to see a lot more drowned outs than we were anticipated to see here just, back in 1st of June. From there, production wise, that was kind of 150,000 less acres. Doesn't really change your uh, production number all that much from there. But the on the soybean side, because of this expanded soybean oil usage in our renewable diesel, and that they increased that export, or excuse me, that U.S. crush by 50. At the same time, though, because of the uh, potential competition from South America, they took 70 million out of exports. So here we are, a 15 million kind of adjustment here that moved up uh, the coming year's soybean carryover stock to 310. Now that's going up 15, but I wouldn't consider that an extremely negative number. Doesn't mean that it's extremely bullish, but similar to the corn number, which was reduced down to 1.66 billion bushels here because of the adjusted numbers that came through, is the fact that it really gets back to the idea: what kind of corn and soybean yields are we going to come up with? There's lots of people out there uh, jumping on the bandwagon of some very impressive numbers and yields. I know that sometimes we get these big jumps in corn and soybean yields because of the weather situation and that. But I think that to some extent we had that same attitude a year ago. I wonder if it's going to stay that way uh, as we go all the way through the summer. And also, to some extent, the heavy rains in different parts of the particularly Western Corn Belt, and that this, and even to some extent in flat ground, if you start getting a lot of extra rain, you start washing out some of your fertility. So that's another feature of those too. But uh, right now, at least, those are the numbers for there. We see what the wheat. What do you want to do with wheat? Want to start now, or you want to start something else?
Well, we can talk about wheat before we hear your perspective about the markets next week.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it ended up wheat, uh, old crop wheat ended up 10 million higher than the USDA was projecting here, but it was kind of a combination of slightly higher exports, but also reduced feed and residual from there. The interesting twist on wheat is we really have had kind of two different crops out there. The winter wheat crop, the USDA made some really big adjustments here, about 880, I think it was, thousand acres of harvested corn, uh, reduced because of really a combination of some drought issues in the Southwest and also the cattle industry and the producers out there decided that they make more money feeding the grazing out the wheat crop in the Southwest, both Texas, Oklahoma, parts of Kansas, Colorado, things like that. And so that made a big difference in our wheat production number, where we were down on winter wheat about 35 million. Uh, uh, Overall, we did have a combination of some reduced yields and things like that in soft red too. But the winter wheat number output was adjusted down about 40 million, 37, 38 million. And then the production number for spring wheat came back. It's interesting. The USDA doesn't officially put any spring wheat estimates in here from May on until we get to July now. So we had a couple months where they were kind of covering or utilizing numbers that somewhat conservative type situation, but the rains that have happened in the northern plains and out into Montana have been good, and so the numbers on spring wheat uh, ultimately were about 10 million or so, 8, 10 million higher than the winter wheat numbers. So ultimately, we had a slightly higher production number there. The strength we've seen in exports on wheat. And it looks like this is kind of happening because of some of the Black Sea shipments here have not really taken off very strongly. Part of it's one of the regions right east of the Black Sea in Russia hasn't had the best of crops. Now, they continue to be optimistic other places in Russia will compensate for it, but I think it's part of the reason why their exports so far in this marketing year have not been all that spiffy. And so the world's been looking at other places for wheat in the short term from there. So,
Okay, and what about your perspective for the markets next week? Are you bullish, even though in Brazil the weather has helped in Mato Grosso, and it sounds like the losses will not be so great for corn there?
yeah, yeah. Well, I think that basically they've been slow to harvest their corn because they've been so aggressively shipping soybeans out, and that because they got the China and other customers willing to get the soybeans, and they were kind of storing the corn in the field and that, and now they're starting to see that it's time to start harvesting on corn, and some of the yields have been pretty good down there on the Mato Grosso side of things. I'm not so sure that Paraná and Rio Grande had this as the strong second crop corn weather that Mato Grosso had, but in general, the uh, scenario on South America at this point is going to continue to watch uh, how that second crop corn comes in at this point and how strongly competitive. The U.S. is interestingly enough, we've they continued to buyers around the world have continued to look at U.S. supplies, partly because of the fact that Brazilians have got such a their exporting facilities right now are so clogged or so utilized for soybeans that they're so the world's looking to the U.S. to get their corn in the short term. And people are looking at these prices too and say, I think I can afford to take care of these prices. Now, the key thing is, what do we do with it from here? We're down here near loan, or just some cases below loan in certain places, and that. And so I don't think the producer wants to be a seller down here, but the key thing is that will there be any huge response to the bounce out of this thing? It's still going to be weather connected. It's going to be what's happening in Washington. From there, right now, at least, the weather for the coming week has a few temperature situations in there, but it's not supposed to get much above the low 90s here in Chicago. So that's unfortunately the world seems to look at our temperatures in Chicago, say that's important. It is for us in Chicago, but what if it's 95 to 100 in Iowa and Minnesota? That's probably more important, but that doesn't really get covered all that well. But right now, at least, weather situations, things like that, I kind of think we're going to continue to creep along. Producers aren't going to be selling. There's going to still be a need for some shipments to be filled and get out the door. And so I think there could be some bounces, but I think in general here, taking advantage of those over the next month or so. Probably it's a better approach because one thing that we are going to run into here is that once the export coverages are done, the export world is going to sit back and wait to see what kind of crop we have. And right now, at least, it doesn't look to be a disaster, but I'm not sure we got 185 bushel corn or 52 to 53 bushel beans, but it's early. We got plenty of harvesting, or excuse me, plenty of growing season still ahead of us.
All right, thank you very much. We'll
You
talk.
bet. Take care. We'll talk next week.